exactly the U.S. is negotiating with in Iran and why the U.S. and this administration trusts that person?
Again, as I said to Gabe's question earlier, we're not going to get into the details of these negotiations and conversations that continue to take place. As, of course, you can imagine, they are very sensitive diplomatic discussions. And I would reiterate, I do recall giving all of you the same answer when we were negotiating the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. Gave you the same answer throughout the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. Gave you the same answer with respect to many of the other global conflicts that this administration has negotiated solutions to. President Trump is going to give his diplomats the freedom that they need to have these sensitive diplomatic discussions without negotiating and litigating them through the news media. Fran.
Karoline, just to follow up, though, because you said that some of the information that's been out there about the 15-point plan is inaccurate, can you say what is accurate with respect to ballistic missiles, the nuclear ambitions, and the Strait of Hormuz, which are things that the president has laid out that he wants to see a couple times in the past?
Look, if you've heard it from the President of the United States, obviously it's true, as well as the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. We've said repeatedly, I've said them from this podium, the Pentagon has reiterated them. That's why we've taken military action to achieve them. So, of course, those are goals that we want to see. But this full 15-point plan that's been floating around in many of your outlets, there's a lot of misinformation to that as well. And again, I would caution you from taking things from anonymous sources rather than verifying them directly with the White House. Christian.
Thanks, Karoline. Two on Iran. First, would the president consider loosening asylum restrictions for Iranians trying to flee the country right now?
Again, that's a question for the president. I won't get ahead of him on that. I haven't talked to him about that.
Okay. And then secondly, you mentioned at the top that Iran would be hit harder than they have been to this point if they don't recognize the fact that they're losing this war. Could those strikes happen before this 5-day negotiating window closes if the president doesn't think they're negotiating in good faith?
You're asking me to tell you if the commander-in-chief would authorize very strong strikes against the Iranian regime. That's not something I would ever reveal from this podium, true or not. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline. I was wondering if you would respond to some of this criticism of the administration from past allies like Joe Kent, who have said that the president's red line shifted from Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon to Iran cannot pursue nuclear enrichment. What is the administration's response to that criticism?
I think the president and I have both strongly responded to the criticism by Mr. Kent, who unfortunately resigned in disgrace and accused the president of basically being controlled by foreign countries and foreign manipulation, which is a ridiculous and laughable assertion. So his accusations have zero credibility as far as this White House is concerned.
The question of the red line shifting from no nuclear weapon to no nuclear enrichment, is there any substance to that argument?
I think the president has been quite clear in what he wants to see from the Iranian regime, which is why he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury in the first place. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. I have a question for you on the SAVE Act, and I'd like to follow up on the DHS shutdown.
Sure.
First, Senator Mike Lee.
The Save America Act.
Save America Act. The president corrected me yesterday. It was my fault. Senator Mike Lee said it's essentially impossible to pass the Save America Act through reconciliation. What's your reaction to that? Is the president worried that that strategy might fail?
I think he's willing to try all strategies. I spoke with him about this yesterday, and he said if we can make it work through reconciliation, let's absolutely do that. These, again, are common sense policies that are backed by the vast majority of voters across this country. The only people in this country who don't support them are politicians on Capitol Hill, and you all should ask them why they don't want voter ID, why they don't want proof of citizenship to vote in our nation's elections. Again, these are common sense proposals that are wildly popular, and the president is willing to use any means necessary to get this legislation passed and onto his desk.
And then on the DHS shutdown, do you expect deportations to decrease while ICE is in the airports? And what are the trade-offs of having ICE in the airports right now?
Well, to address this obviously short-term problem and the chaos that has been sowed by these Democrats on Capitol Hill, to address the lines and to get Americans traveling and get them to where they need to be. So the president, I think this was a creative solution, again, that was criticized, but we have seen wait times decrease, not as much as we'd like. Hopefully they will continue to, but at major airports over the course of the last few days as ICE has been facilitating with travelers in these airports.
Sure, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline. On March 6th, the president said in an interview with Reuters that the U.S. should have a role in choosing Iran's next leadership. Now that we're almost 4 weeks into the operation, is that still the president's assessment of where it should go?
As I've said repeatedly, I think the president obviously believes the United States wants to have someone in leadership position in the Iranian regime that will be much more favorable, that will be willing to work with the United States, that will no longer chant death to America. These would obviously be good common sense things for the United States and for our allies. And I think that's what the president meant when he spoke with Reuters that day. Go ahead.
The president yesterday said that he had achieved regime change in Iran because the regime has changed. In terms of...
has it not?
Well, the leadership...
Their entire leadership has been killed, and nobody has really seen or legitimately heard from this alleged new leader. So wouldn't you say there's been a change in the regime?
There's been a change in leadership. I mean, do you feel
There's been a change
as though...
in the regime leadership, which is what the president said. So thank you for confirming he was right.
I mean, do you feel as though you've achieved leadership level or the personnel in place right now in Iran that you're satisfied with? I mean, have you...
I think it's too soon to say.
In terms of highly enriched uranium in Iran right now, is your expectation, I mean, the stated desire of the president has been to prevent nuclear weapons. Is your expectation that the end game here is that eventually Americans will be in possession of that uranium, or you'll somehow have some direct control over the highly enriched uranium that could be used to develop it?
Again, this is a point of conversation that continues. I think you know the means in which the United States would have to take in order to achieve that goal, and that's a decision for the president to make. Brian, good to see you, Brian Glenn.
Good to see you as well. Does the White House have a comment on a letter that was sent from Congressman Raskin to the DOJ alleging that the DOJ recklessly released damning information in regards to President Trump's documents?
Yes, I saw that letter from Congressman Raskin this morning, who I would add has zero credibility, and this letter was clearly a cheap political stunt. What the congressman did here, Brian, and for everyone in the room who's hopefully not reporting on this as fact, is that he took untrue and salacious claims in a memo that was produced by Jack Smith, who has been completely discredited for his lawfare and his witch hunts against this president. And that information was unverified. It never even made it into the indictment because it was so unverified. And what happened to that indictment anyway? It was thrown out. And Jack Smith has been proven, again, to be a prosecutor on a witch hunt against President Trump. He tried to throw him in jail ahead of the 2024 election. The Biden Department of Justice was fully on board with this lawfare campaign. And in fact, this story that was concocted by Congressman Raskin was so ridiculous, I understand his communications team reached out to some outlets in this room who responsibly said, we're not going to write this because this is just too much. However, of course, MS Now did write that story this morning because they continue to be left-wing propaganda for the Democrat Party. But I think Jack Smith has been proven to be a liar and a fraud. And this is, again, a cheap political stunt from a Democrat on Capitol Hill who I think wants to get himself on cable television. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
तर्जमान व्हाइट हाउस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करी थी। उन्होंने कहा कि सदर ट्रंप तेल की कीमतों को बरकरार रखने के लिए इक़दाम कर रहे हैं। ट्रंप और शी की मुलाकात 14 और 15 मई को बीजिंग में होगी। उन्होंने कहा कि ईरान के 140 से ज्यादा बहरी जहाज तबाह कर दिए। ईरानी पासदारान इनकलाब का अमरीकी जंगी तैयारा F-18 गिराने का दावा। अमरीकी फौज का चौथा स्ट्रेटेजिक तैयारा है जिसे आज चाबहार में निशाना बनाया गया। ईरानी न्यूज एजेंसी के मुताबिक अमरीकी जंगी तैयारे F-18 को जदीद फिजाई दिफाई निजाम से निशाना बनाया गया। अमरीकी जंगी तैयारा F-18 बहरे हिंद में गिरकर तबाह हुआ है। ईरानी सदर का कहना है शहीद ईरानी सुप्रीम लीडर की हिदायत के मुताबिक अहम मामलात में फैसला मुतफिका होगा। आज भी जंग के मामले पर तमाम फैसला साज इदारे अजीम रहबर की रहनुमाई में यक आवाज हैं। ईरान के तमाम इदारे इत्तेहाद और हम आहंगी के साथ काम कर रहे हैं। ये इत्तेहाद मौसर इंतजाम, बहरानों से निकलने, कौमी मुफादात के तहफ्फुज के लिए मजबूत बुनियाद है। ایک بریک کے بعد آپ دیکھ سکیں گے ہوشیاریاں.
داغوں سے ہوئی کھل کے فائٹ, موڈ ہوا ڈیلائٹ, اتنی امیزنگ جو ہے پرائز, 1 kg پیک اب 550 روپے میں.
السلام علیکم ناظرین, میں ہوں ہارون رفیق اور آپ دیکھ رہے ہیں ہوشیاریاں. دوستو, کہا ہی جاتا ہے کہ کاش معاشرہ بدل جائے, چیزیں بہتر ہو جائیں, سب میں اخلاقیات آ جائیں, لیکن یہ ہم سنتے آ رہے ہیں 70 سال سے زیادہ ہو گئے, یہ سوچتے سوچتے کہتے کہتے فرق نہیں پڑا. لیکن کئی مرتبہ کوئی چیز جیسے آپ کے سامنے پڑی ہوتی ہے, آپ کو نظر نہیں آ رہی ہوتی, آپ ڈھونڈ رہے ہوتے ہیں. ویسے بیویوں میں یہ کمال ہوتا ہے کہ وہ فوراً آ کے ڈھونڈ دیتی ہیں جو چیز آپ کو نہیں مل رہی ہوتی, اور وہ سامنے پڑی ہوتی ہے, دکھائی نہیں دیتی. ایک بہت چھوٹا سا فرق ہے, اگر وہ فرق ہم اپنے اندر پیدا کر لیں, سبھی لوگ پیدا کر لیں, بہت آسان ہے, چھوٹا سا فرق ہے, تو آپ کی زندگی نہ صرف یہ کہ جنت بن جائے گی, بلکہ آپ کی وجہ سے بہت سے لوگوں کی زندگی جو دوزخ بنی ہوتی ہے وہ جنت بن جائے گی. جی ہاں, کئی مرتبہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ آپ کسی کو کہتے ہیں پرے ہٹ جاؤ, پھر آپ تھوڑا اور اوپر اٹھتے ہیں, پھر اور لوگوں کو پرے کرنے لگتے ہیں, پیچھے ہو جاؤ, دور چلے جاؤ. لیکن پھر ایک وقت آ جاتا ہے جب آپ کہہ رہے ہوتے ہیں کوئی تو قریب آ جاؤ, پھر کوئی قریب نہیں آتا. آپ کو وہ وقت یاد کرنا پڑتا ہے جب آپ انہیں پرے کر رہے تھے. بات یہ ہے, جو چھوٹا سا فرق ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ ہم اپنے لیے سوچتے ہیں اور لوگوں کے بارے میں سوچتے ہیں. صرف اتنا فرق پیدا کرنا ہے کہ اپنے بارے میں سوچنا ہے, اپنے لیے نہیں سوچنا, اور لوگوں کے لیے سوچنا ہے, لوگوں کے بارے میں نہیں سوچنا. اس بارے میں سوچئے گا. آئیے اسی پیغام کے ساتھ شروع کرتے ہیں آج کا شو. آج آپ کو لاہور کی چھتوں پہ لے کے چلتے ہیں اور دیکھتے ہیں کیا گہما گہمی. کیسے ہو شاہد؟
ٹھیک ہی گئے جی, دعاواں تہاڈیاں.
آج سر گرا کے بڑے پریشان سے کیوں کھڑے ہو؟
ارون صاحب اے کونا دیکھ رہے ہیں؟
کون سا؟
اے جڑا.
جی جی, یہ کونا.
پتہ نہیں کی گل ہی, اتنی محبت وے نا اس کونے نا مین.
اتنا ہم شکل ہے میں.
نہیں ہم شکل نہیں, اے بھی ہوندا ہی نا, کو گھر دا کونا کیڑا پسند وے مینوں. اے
اچھا,
کو اللہ جانے دے چ ہن گل کی گئی, یہ سارا گھر ہے.
آج ویرانیاں کیوں ہیں, باقی سب لوگ کہاں ہیں؟
ایتھے ہی گئے نے, کوئی مطلب.
وہ تمہارے ابو آ گئے.
میں یار کلر جہا لوا کے آیا, صحیح لگ رہا ہے. میں ریٹائر رضاکار لگ رہے ہو ابا جی. بھائی ایک گل دا جواب تے دینا. کی؟ مینوں چھوٹے ہوندے بھی اس کونے نال پیار ہی گس. اوے پتریا, کونے تے تو بیٹھا ہوندا سی, ایتھے میں تینوں پورے پورے پا دیندا سی. ایتھے تو پنجے پسائے ہوندے سی. کی ہو گیا, سارا گھر ہی تیرا ہے. ابا جی اج میں نا محلے دی گلی دے وچوں لنگ رہیا سی, انہاں دے گھر نا منڈا ہویا, بڑیاں خوشیاں منا رہے سی. ادھر خورشید ال, ہاں خورشید ال تے لطیف ال کٹھا ہویا. تے میرے بھی دل چ آئے پی جدوں میں پیدا ہویا سی, ظاہری بات ہے, تے خوشیاں تے تسی رج منائیاں ہون گیاں.
لے پتر, جے تو اپنی پیدائش دا واقعہ سننا چاہنا ہے تے اج تو 35-40 سال پیچھے چلا جا. جدوں تو پیدا ہویا